Toa is a trading card game where players are the main characters on personalized trading cards. Art is created using the AI tool Midjourney to make players look like characters in a fantasy world. To collect cards, players must create and complete quests for one another, and they use cards as a reward for completing each other's quests. Toa is designed to be played alongside other games in a nerd adventure tournament, and is run by a game master. To start the game, each player has a giveaway deck of cards, a treasure pouch card, and 20 treasure pieces. During the game, players will separate their cards between their giveaway deck and their playable deck. The giveaway deck is reserved for rewarding cards to other players for completing their quests. Playable decks can be used to actually play the trading card game Toa. A player's giveaway deck is made up of cards depicting the character that they're role-playing, each with their own unique ability. Each card in the giveaway deck has the same ability, but with varying raw strength values ranging from 1 to 10. Raw strength values are depicted by the number in the star in the bottom left-hand corner of the card. Cards with higher raw strength are generally more powerful and more rare than those that have a lower raw strength. The rarity of different values is illustrated by the color of the star, with bronze being the least rare, followed by silver, then gold and black being the rarest. As an example, each player might start with 3 copies for each bronze number, 2 copies of each silver number, and 1 copy of each gold and black number, to have a total of 19 cards in their giveaway deck. We'll talk more about raw strength later on in the video. Upon receiving their giveaway deck of cards, each player selects one of these cards to add as the first card in their playable deck. Playable decks must be made of unique adventurers with different abilities. Players will use the remaining cards from their giveaway deck to reward other players through the completion of quests. To gain additional cards, players act as both adventurers and as quest givers, and they may switch between these roles at any time. As a quest giver, players create quests for other adventurers to complete. When an adventurer has completed a quest for a quest giver, they may draw a card at random from the quest giver's giveaway deck to add to their own playable deck. If an adventurer is unhappy with the result of the draw, for example, they were wanting a different raw strength, they may pay the quest giver 1 treasure to return their previously drawn card and draw a different card at random. Alternatively, an adventurer may complete a new quest for the quest giver to earn another redraw. When an adventurer is redrawing a card, the card or cards that they previously had drawn should not re-enter the quest giver's giveaway deck until after they have finished redrawing cards. After redrawing, the adventurer may choose to keep the newly drawn card or get their previously drawn card back. Adventurers may continue paying treasure to the quest giver to redraw until they receive a card that they're happy with. Quest givers should strive to create memorable quests for adventurers to complete. A good quest is one that the adventurer will remember because it will have a story worthy of telling at the end. Quests for redraws should also be memorable, and players should not just exchange redraws for redraws. As a general rule, quests shouldn't be too easy or too difficult to complete. If a quest giver has created a quest that an adventurer cannot complete or does not want to complete for whatever reason, they may negotiate to complete a different quest for them to earn their card. Each quest giver must post a quest on the quest board for all adventurers to see. Adventurers may not complete quests or acquire other cards unless they have already posted a quest for other adventurers to complete. Quest givers may change their quests at any time, but they should always have an active quest available. Quest givers may have more than 1 quest posted at a time. There are some cards that are not earned from other quest givers, but they are instead earned in special ways. One such card is a legendary card. Each legendary card is unique, and players may only have 1 legendary card in their playable deck. To earn a legendary card, players must complete a quest that the game master created. When an adventurer has earned their legendary card, they will draw 1 at random from the game master, and just like other cards, adventurers pay 1 treasure to return the legendary card that they drew to draw a different one instead. Adventurers are free to trade earned legendary cards with one another. There are also some cards that are special edition. These cards may be a little bit more difficult to earn. For example, a card may be awarded to the first player who completes everyone else's quest and collects their card. In these cases, these cards might have limited availability. These cards may also be earned from a game master, and instead of drawing a card at random, players may see the cards that are available and choose one to draw and add to their playable deck. Once players have collected at least 10 cards, they can create their own battle deck to play the game Toa against one other player. A battle deck is made up of either 9 cards and 1 legendary card, or 10 cards and a treasure pouch card. In Toa, cards are made up of multiple attributes that are used during gameplay. These include flavor text is a fun quote from or about the adventurer represented on the card. Raw strength is in the bottom left-hand corner of the card, and that is used to determine initiative and to calculate the total strength of the card. Ability text explains the special ability that the card performs. Class is represented by different symbols that describe the general nature of the ability. The 5 classes are offensive, which modify the strength of cards; defensive, which act quickly and prevent opponent abilities; recovery, which recover cards that have been defeated; assassin, which defeats cards in special ways; and wild, which copies the abilities of other cards. Legendary cards have their own attributes as well. These include legendary abilities, which describe what the legendary card can do. Gem cost is the required number of gems the player must spend in order to use the legendary ability. Sockets are spaces where gems are held on the card. Both legendary and treasure pouch cards can hold up to 4 gems. To win the game, a player must exhaust and or destroy all of their opponent's cards while having at least 1 card remaining in their draw or reserve pile. To set up, each player chooses 10 cards from their playable deck to create a battle deck, which may include up to 1 legendary card. It can be helpful to play with a playmat as well. If a player is playing with a legendary card, they place their legendary card face up in the legendary spot on their playmat. And they place a gem or any other marker on each of the sockets. If a player is not playing with a legendary card, they will place their treasure pouch card as an additional card in place of the legendary card. This would be that player's 11th card. Then the player shuffled their other cards in their battle deck and placed them face down in front of them, creating a draw pile. Each player must also leave enough space to support an exhaust pile, a destroyed pile, a reserve pile, and a play area in front of all of their piles. Players may look through the destroyed, exhausted, and reserve pile of either player at any time, but not through the draw piles. Before the game begins, each player draws the top 3 cards from their draw pile. They choose 1 card to place on top of their draw pile, and the other 2 go into the reserve pile. Players battle their cards against each other in rounds of combat in order to exhaust and or destroy their opponent's cards. A round is a battle between 2 opposing cards and is made up of 4 phases. The first phase is called initiative. During initiative, both players draw the top card of their draw pile and place it face up in the play area as the card in play. Players then determine who has initiative. If a player has a defensive card, they have initiative. If neither player has a defensive card, or if both players do, then the player with the lower raw strength has initiative. Once players have determined who has initiative, move to phase 2. In the case of a tie for initiative, each player reveals the top card of their draw pile, while keeping their previous card out as the card in play. The player with a lower raw strength on their newly drawn card has initiative. Both of the revealed cards are then placed into each player's reserve pile. If both of the new cards have the same raw strength, players continue revealing cards and placing them in the reserve pile until they can clearly determine who has initiative. If a player has no cards left in their draw pile when they must reveal a card, they should shuffle the reserve pile to create a new draw pile. If one player doesn't have any cards left to reveal, their opponent may decide who has initiative. If all of the remaining cards in each player's battle deck have the same raw strength, players flip a coin to decide who has initiative. Phase 2 is the ability phase. During this phase, both players may choose to use their card's abilities and or legendary abilities on their turn, or they may choose not to. The player with initiative will go first and take their turn. Then their opponent will take their turn. During a player's turn, they will read aloud their ability text on their card and perform the ability that is described if they choose to. Players may also choose to use any legendary actions at any point during their turn. After a player has used all of the abilities in the legendary actions that they would like, they announce the end of their turn and their card's total strength. Once both players have completed their turn, move to phase 3. If a player chooses to play their ability, they must play the whole ability if possible. If an ability requires a player to interact with a card or cards from an exhaust or reserve pile, but the required cards are not available, that part of the ability cannot be used. But the other parts of the ability can still be used. For example, if you go first bonuses, or +1 gem. If an ability has an or statement, the statements separated by the or text count as 2 different abilities, and the player may choose which one of these abilities they want to use. If an ability has multiple effects, and the player can use all of them, they can choose the order in which they are played. Some parts of an ability may be optional if it is preceded by the text "you may." Phase 3 is the strength contest. During the strength contest, both players compare the total strength of their cards in play. The player with a higher total strength wins the round, and the loser's card is exhausted. Once players have completed the strength contest, resolve any remaining abilities such as ones that say "if you win" or "if you lose." And if both players have these effects on their cards, the player with initiative will resolve theirs first. When the strength contest has come to an end and the abilities have been resolved, move to phase 4 of the round. If at the end of phase 3 the total strength of both cards is the same, the players enter a tie-breaking sequence called a war. The abilities of the previously played cards are considered resolved and no longer take effect, for example, "if you win" or "if you lose," but they remain face up in the play area. Other cards are cleaned up and placed in their respective piles as described in phase 4. Each player then plays a new card, covering their previously played cards, and the new cards are now considered the card in play. These new cards now battle against each other and follow the phases of a normal round. Once a winner of the war is determined, the loser's card in play will be exhausted or destroyed as normal, and their previous card or cards in play from earlier in the round become exhausted too. If a player has no cards left to draw when they should enter a war, and there are no cards in the reserve pile to shuffle to create a new draw pile, that player loses the round and exhausts their final card or cards. Phase 4 is the cleanup phase. During this phase, both players remove their cards from the play area to the following designated locations. Exhausted cards go to the exhaust pile, destroyed cards go to the destroyed pile, and all other cards go to the reserve pile. Players then start a new round at phase 1. Each legendary card has its own unique ability known as actions or reactions that can be used at different times during the game. Each action and reaction can only be used once during a round. Players may use an action on their turn during phase 2. Players may use a reaction at any time during the game, as long as they are reacting to the condition described by the ability. For example, a reaction that says "if you win" can be used after phase 3 of the round because that is when the strength contest takes place. When a player uses a reaction, it must be followed to completion before moving on. Each legendary ability has a gem cost listed next to it. To use a legendary ability, players must spend the appropriate number of gems by removing them from the card. Players continue playing rounds until all of one player's cards have become exhausted and or destroyed at the end of a round. The player with at least one card remaining in their draw and or reserve pile wins. If there's a tie at the end of the game, or if neither player can exhaust or destroy any of their opponent's remaining cards, a stalemate has occurred. In this case, both players reshuffle all their cards as if they were to start a new game. Players engage in one final round of sudden death. In a sudden death round, players cannot use their legendary cards, but legendaries keep their gems and may still gain and lose gems. The player who wins the round wins the game. If neither player wins the round of sudden death, players continue playing sudden death rounds until one player wins a round and therefore wins the game. The victor of the game should seal in their victory by reading the flavor text at the bottom of the winning card aloud with passion. There are some key words that are found on the card's abilities that you should also know. One word is copy. When prompted to copy a part of another card, the card will use the specified attributes of that card while retaining all their original attributes. For example, a card may copy another card's ability, and everything else about that card would stay the same except for its ability. A player may decide not to copy another card once they have drawn a card to copy. In this case, they won't use an ability this round. If a player copies one of their cards, the copied card is placed in the play area next to the card in play. The copied card is not considered to be in the exhaust or reserve pile while it's being copied. Exhausted cards that were copied will resume their exhausted status and will return to the exhausted pile in phase 4. Players may only copy their opponent's ability once per round. Another word is draw. If a player is prompted to draw a card, they must draw the top card from their draw pile. unless an ability says otherwise. If a player doesn't have any cards left in their draw pile, they shuffle the cards in their reserve pile, and that becomes their new draw pile. If a player is prompted to draw a card or cards by their opponent but cannot, their card in play becomes exhausted. When a player is done using a drawn card, for example, none of its attributes are being used by the card in play, or the card in play's ability has been resolved, then they place it in their reserve pile, or back to the exhausted or destroyed pile if it came from one of these. While exhausted or destroyed cards are in the play area, they are not considered to be in the exhausted or destroyed piles. Two other terms are exhaust and destroy. During the course of a game, a player's cards become exhausted and or destroyed, which will remove their cards from being able to be played. Exhausted cards can be recovered, but cards that are destroyed cannot. When a player's card in play has been exhausted or destroyed, they can still use that card's ability on their turn. The player whose card has been exhausted or destroyed will lose the strength contest in Phase 3. In this case, it is possible that both players lose the strength contest. If a player is prompted to exhaust or destroy their next card, they must draw a card from their draw pile and place it in the exhaust or destroyed pile immediately. If their draw pile is empty, then they should shuffle their reserve pile to make a new draw pile and then draw a card to exhaust or destroy. If a player doesn't have any cards in their draw or reserve pile, then their card in play becomes exhausted or destroyed instead. If a card is exhausted or destroyed more than once in a round, the effect is the same as if it happened only once. If a card is exhausted and destroyed in the same round, it counts as destroyed. Some cards have symbols with gems on them. Cards with the plus or minus gem symbol allow players to add or subtract gems to the sockets on their legendary cards. If a player has no empty sockets on their legendary card, they can still use the ability, but they cannot add more gems to that card. Persevere. When a player perseveres, they keep their card in play for additional rounds instead of drawing a new card. The card that they use to persevere stays in the play area during Phase 4 of the round to battle again in the next round. This card has already used its ability and cannot use it again in the next round. Prevent. When a card prevents an ability, the opponent cannot use a specified ability for their card in play unless it has already been used. Recover. When prompted to recover a card, a player takes the card out of their exhaust pile and places it on top of their reserve pile. And lastly, there's a symbol on cards for modifying strength. Cards with the star symbol can modify the strength of the card by adding or subtracting the number shown in the symbol to calculate the total strength of the card. So that is how you play Toa. I hope you enjoyed listening to the rules and feel ready to play the game. If you are interested in playing the game and you're not part of our community, let us know in the comments down below or reach out to us in our different social media channels in the description below. Hope to see you next time.